In my opinion, the Washington Wizards are in one of the more interesting and unique positions in the NBA going into the 2020 to 2021 NBA season. Let's first dissect this team by breaking down the roster. Bradley Beal, who's basically been playing without John Wall over the past 2.5 years, has really ascended into a bona fide perennial all-star caliber player. But with John Wall returning and proclaiming to be 110% healthy, there is reason for the Wizards to believe or to be optimistic about their chances to compete in the Eastern Conference over the next few years, especially given that the Eastern Conference is relatively weaker than the Western Conference. Actually, I won't say weaker, I'll say the Eastern Conference is a lot more top heavy than the Western Conference, because in the West, you have a lot of teams, at least 3 or 4 teams that are going to be competing for an 8 seed that could probably make it if they were in the Eastern Conference. And in the Eastern Conference, it's mainly a top 6 or 7 teams that are really playoff caliber. And then the bottom 2 seeds, 7 and 8, are more often than not pretty subpar. So yeah, the Eastern Conference is really top heavy, so I think the Wizards definitely have a great chance of making the playoffs. Especially with John Wall returning and claiming to be 110% healthy. It's going to be really interesting to see that backcourt, Bradley Beal and John Wall, together again, especially since John Wall said he wants to defer to Bradley Beal so he can continue his scoring outbursts that we saw last year, continuing with Bradley Beal as the solidified #1 option. Not only does Washington have a star backcourt, but they also have a promising young core, starting with their top draft pick of the 2019 draft, Rui Hachimura, who had a really promising rookie year and in my opinion should have landed him a all-rookie first team spot. I think I would have given it to him over Eric Pascal. He was the second leading scorer on that Washington Wizards team, obviously behind Bradley Beal, and he scored about 15 points on pretty good efficiency, around 45 or 46% from the field, which is good, like I said, for a rookie. He was a particularly great finisher. He shot about 68% from the field at the rim range. Rui Hachimura was able to put up that amount of production without really having a consistent outside shot. He only shot, I think he shot sub 30% from 3. So you would hope that he can improve his 3-point shot and improve a little bit on the defensive end. That's the case for a lot of Washington Wizards. But hopefully Rui can improve his shooting and defense, and there's reason to believe so. He's only 21 years old. The next member of the Wizards' young core is Thomas Bryant, who quietly had a great season. I'll admit I wasn't really paying attention to Washington Wizards games because Thomas Bryant quietly had a great season. He put up about 13 points and 7 rebounds in 24 minutes, so high production in a relatively small amount of time for a starting center. And he shot 40% from 3, which I didn't even know until I saw it in a Funky Diabetic video, that he shot 40% from the 3-point line. He's a center, people. This man is a center shooting 40% from 3. Obviously, he didn't take like 4 or 5 threes per game. I think he took about 2.5 or 3 if I'm not mistaken. But that's still a ridiculous percentage. Thomas Bryant is looking like a modern day center, one that can space the floor and bang a bit down low if he has a mismatch. He also moves very well for a center. I've seen him handle the ball in the open floor occasionally in a fast break. He also brings a lot of energy on offense and defense. He gets a lot of offensive rebound, putback scores, makes a lot of hustle plays on defense, and he's on a pretty good contract for 2 more years, making about $8.5 million per year. And he is only 22, so there's only reason to believe that he can get better as well. He's been improving throughout his first 2 years in the NBA. And another member of their young core is Troy Brown Jr. He had a solid second year in the league. He improved in every statistic. You could say, oh, he improved just because he got a lot more playing time this year, but he also improved his percentages. Field goal percentages, 3-point percentages, and free throw percentages all improved. So he definitely showed improvement, not just because he got more time. And he showed potential as a two-way playmaking forward. In the games that I saw him play, he was really adept at disrupting plays, getting in passing lanes, or getting some on-ball steals if he was trailing a play. He just had a knack for getting timely steals. And a lot of times he would get the steal and just immediately start running in the transition, and he'd either finish at the rim or set up a lot of people in transition. I did some research on YouTube and I saw a lot of him doing the same exact things that I described, and he's only 20 years old, so there's reason to believe that he can improve given his improvement off of his rookie year to his second year. And the Wizards also have some other young guys who maybe didn't play as well as the three that I explained. They have Mo Wagner, who has stretch big potential. Isaac Bonga, who's, I guess he's been a meme player throughout his first couple of years, but he's only 20 years old. I saw him have a pretty big game in the bubble. And they have Jerome Robinson, who was a lottery pick 2 years ago, so maybe there's a good chance that at least two of these other guys develop into quality NBA players who maybe you keep a part of your team as role players or capitalize on your trade value. Another member of the Wizards, not particularly their young core, but just on the team that I want to talk about is Bertans, who emerged as literally one of the best shooters in the league this year. I think he shot like 10 threes per game on like 41 or 42% from three, which is insane. And the Wizards were a pretty good team at shooting threes this year. They were a pretty high scoring team in general. But Bertans is an unrestricted free agent. Hopefully they can bring him back on a team friendly deal. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that might want his shooting, because shooting is like the most valuable asset in the league. So there might be some suitors for Bertans. But hopefully the Wizards can bring him back on like a 3-year, $8, $9, or $10 billion per type of deal. Because like I said, Bertans was a big reason for their high scoring offense last year. And imagine John Wall playing with stretch bigs like Bertans and Thomas Bryant. Because we know John Wall likes to attack the rim. And if he has spacing from those bigs, it could be really vital in terms of easing John Wall back into his groove. Now that I've broken down kind of the roster in terms of what they have, let's kind of talk about what they don't have, their needs. It's defense, and they need a lot of it. They were second to last in defensive rating, only behind the Cavs. They're only behind the Cavs by 0.1 of a rating point. So they're basically dead last in defensive rating. So they need a lot of defensive help. That should come when John Wall hits the floor. He was a good perimeter defender when healthy, and that should be a major defensive upgrade over Isaiah Thomas. And you hope that your young scoring stars can take a next step on defense, Rui Hachimura and Thomas Bryant. Maybe you insert Troy Brown into the starting lineup at small forward a bit more often. Like I said, he has a lot of two-way potential on the perimeter. He did start a couple games last year, but maybe you start him a bit more this year at small forward, given that you need defensive help. Scott Brooks, Beal's not a great defender, but maybe he'll be a bit more locked in, given that the team can actually win games this year. Another area of concern besides defense that I have for this team is rebounding, because Rui Hachimura didn't really rebound at that high of a rate for a power forward, and Thomas Bryant isn't really a rebounding behemoth. So I kind of have an area of concern there, because you also have bigs off the bench who aren't great rebounders in Mo Wagner and Bertans. So that could be a really big area of concern. You're going to have to need your smalls and your perimeter players to kind of help on the glass. As far as strengths, like projecting into the next year, the Wizards have a lot of playmaking on the team. With John Wall coming back, he was one of the best passers in the league when he was healthy. Bradley Beal has improved a lot as a playmaker without John Wall on the floor over the past 2 or 3 years. Troy Brown Jr., like I said, has good two-way playmaking potential. He could be a really good third ball handler. And then you have Ish Smith as a backup point guard. I think he's signed on a deal for next year guaranteed. Ish Smith is a really good, solid backup point guard. He's a pretty good floor general running your second unit, gets a lot of assists. But yeah, that's a lot of playmaking in your starting lineup and in your bench unit. You also have a decent amount of shot creation. Bradley Beal has really improved as a shot creator without playing without John Wall. He's proved himself as one of the best scorers in the league last year without much help around him. Rui Hachimura got his own shot from time to time. John Wall has always been able to get to the rim, and he should still be able to do so if he's 110% healthy. And Thomas Bryant isn't really going to be a go-to low post option, but he punished mismatches a lot inside. And then shooting is kind of a strength, because like I said, you have two stretch bigs that shot 40% and up from three, and Bertans and Thomas Bryant. And then Mo Wagner, he didn't really shoot great last year, but he's always shown potential as a great shooting big. You gotta hope he cashes in on that. Bradley Beal has always been a great shooter. His 3-point percentage was down a bit this year. I think he was like 35%. in the past when he was playing with John Wall was always above 37 or 38%. I think he had 40% from 3 a couple of years. His 3-point percentage was down this year because of a lack of open shots really created for him. So I think he'll be a lot more efficient from 3 with John Wall coming back to the team, a player that can kind of set him up for some open looks. As for an action plan for the future, this is kind of how I see a best case scenario for the Washington Wizards. In this 2020 offseason in free agency, I think they have 2 options regarding the power forward position. They can bring back Davis Bertans, like I said, the main reason for their high scoring offense behind Bradley Beal. And if you can't bring back Davis Bertans, I would say try and sign an all-purpose defending forward that can stretch the floor. Mainly the guy that I'm thinking of is Jerami Grant, and I know Jerami Grant is like the player that everybody wants on their team, but I think if they let Davis Bertans walk, I think they'll have enough cap space to kind of go after Jerami Grant. If you get Jerami Grant, he's a proven shooter. I think he shot around 40% on the regular season, and he really showed up in the playoffs too as a shooter. And he adds defense to your team, that multi-positional Swiss Army knife kind of a defender. That's really what the Wizards really need off the bench or in the starting lineup. Jerami Grant can fit both roles. And if you can't get him, get the other multi-positional defending forward on the Nuggets who's a free agent this year. Try to get Paul Millsap. Kind of do a lot of the things that Jerami Grant does. He just can't really defend on the perimeter as well as Jerami Grant, and he can't really handle the ball as well as Jerami Grant. Also, another key aspect of their offseason this year is the draft. They have the number 10 pick this year, and there's a couple of defensive-minded wings or forwards that are available in this draft. Either Isaac Okoro, who I think would really be dope for this team, but I don't really know if he'll fall to number 10. Or they can get Patrick Williams, who I think is a player that can fall to number 10. Oh, I'm sorry, they have the 9 pick. Okay. So either Isaac Okoro or Patrick Williams can be a really good player for this team, bringing the defense. I think Patrick Williams is a bit of a better shooter than Isaac Okoro, and he's a bit more multi-positional because he's a bit taller. So if either of those players are available for the Wizards, I think that's kind of the direction that they should go in. So hypothetically, going into the 2020 to 2021 season, this could be their roster, a starting lineup of John Wall, Bradley Beal, Troy Brown Jr., Rui Hachimura, and Thomas Bryant. Off the bench, Ish Smith, Jerome Robinson, Patrick Williams, either Davis Bertans or Jerami Grant, and Mo Wagner. I think that's a decent enough roster to really go out and compete for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. And I think they'll definitely get one in a weaker, or I should stop saying weaker, a top-heavy Eastern Conference where the 7 and 8 seed are really going to be up for grabs. If we look at the standings from last year, just Eastern Conference teams that I think this Washington Wizards team should be better than. Obviously not the Bucks, not the Raptors, not the Celtics, not the Heat. 76ers could go either way. I think they could be better than the Pacers. I don't think they'll be better than the Nets with Kevin Durant and Kyrie coming back. They'll definitely be better than the Orlando Magic. They'll be better than the Hornets. They'll be better than the Bulls. I know a lot of people are expecting the Bulls to make the playoffs this year just because Jim Boylen left or got fired. Firing a coach doesn't solve all of your roster issues, so I don't think they're really a playoff team over the Wizards. They're going to be better than the Knicks, the Pistons, the Hawks, the Cavs. So yeah, I think anywhere in the 6, 7, or 8 range is realistic for the Wizards. And in this regular season, you hope to prove that John Wall is back, that playmaking, slashing point guard, deferring to Bradley Beal. You establish Bradley Beal as a perennial all-star. Continue to improve your young core of Rui Hachimura, Thomas Bryant, Troy Brown Jr., etc. And maybe you have cap space in the 2021 free agency to sign kind of a mid-tier star, maybe like Gordon Hayward. I genuinely think that the Wizards can be successful next year and for years to come. Bradley Beal has established himself as one of the league's best scorers, and John Wall said when he comes back, he wants to keep it that way and really defer to Bradley Beal. The Wizards have a sneaky, promising young core. Rui Hachimura can be a good third scoring option. Thomas Bryant is a modern day big that can stretch the floor for John Wall's drives. And Troy Brown Jr. shows potential as a good third ball handler and a good disruptive wing defender. All 3 of these young players show promise and potential. And the fact that they play in the top-heavy Eastern Conference really bodes well for them. My prediction for the 2021 season for the Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal averages about 26.5 points, 4.5 assists on improved efficiency, maybe about 48% from the field and 40% from 3. John Wall in his return year drops about 16 points per game, 9 assists, 45% from the field, 33% from 3. Rui Hachimura continues to improve. Maybe he gets to about 18 points per game, 7 boards, a steal, and maybe his efficiency improves with playing with an elite playmaker like John Wall. Maybe his field goal percentage improves to about 50 and his 3-point percentage improves to about 33. For Thomas Bryant, I don't think he'll score 13 points per game, but I think he'll get around 10 points per game and 10 rebounds and maybe 1.8 blocks and a lot more minutes played at the starting center position. And I think his efficiency will go up to around 60%. I don't think he'll repeat shooting 40% from 3 because kind of the league knows about him a little bit. But I think he'll still shoot above league average. I think he'll shoot about 38% from 3 with John Wall creating a lot more of his looks. I think Troy Brown will improve to about 13 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists as that secondary or tertiary playmaker on 46% from the field and 35% from 3. Team-wise, I think the Wizards will continue kind of their offense-heavy type of team. I think they'll be about 10th in offensive rating, and I think their defensive rating with John Wall coming back and with the young guys improving on defense and maybe them drafting a defensive young star in the draft this year, I think their defensive rating will improve from second to last in the NBA to about 17th best in defensive rating, and I think they'll get probably the 7th seed in the East behind Philly, because I think Philly will get around the 6th seed, and I think the Wizards can get the 7th seed. And they'll probably lose in about 5 or 6 games to the Boston Celtics.
Bruh.